It is exactly 2 days into the new month of March 2021. How are you doing? Thank you for choosing to join me at this hour. Welcome to LCN News this evening, where manufacturers are racing to produce millions of COVID-19 vaccines, as World Health Organization now says that global cases of COVID-19 is actually on the rise. Now, US officials urge the public to get vaccinated when possible to help fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this even as Johnson & Johnson starts shipping new one-dose vaccine, with almost 4 million doses being distributed in the United States of America alone in the first phase. Now, the new one-dose shot vaccine is 85% effective against severe diseases with no deep freeze storage required. Now, this even as the death rate in the United States of America increases as a third vaccine distribution begins amidst fears of variant growth. Well, CDC now has reported that March, that is this month, will actually become a very key chapter in the COVID-19 pandemic, as 15% of the United States of American public given at least one vaccine dose. Now, meanwhile, USA is not considering sharing COVID-19 vaccine with Mexico, citing border challenges, even as the US President Joe Biden maintains that they still want to maintain strong ties with Mexico. Still in the US, over 300 people have been charged in connection with the deadly insurrection at the Capitol in January 2021. FBI has now already identified suspects in an occurrence that led to the death of a Capitol police officer. And in France, former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been sentenced to prison for corruption. Sarkozy was found guilty of trying to bribe a magistrate, becoming the very first president in the history of France post-World War II republic to face house arrest. Now, a Paris court convicted the former president on charges of influence peddling and corruption, sentencing him to 3 years in prison for offering to help a magistrate land a plum position in the Principality of Monaco in exchange for confidential information about an inquiry into the finances of his 2007 presidential campaign. Now, the court suspended 2 years of Mr. Sarkozy's prison sentence, adding that the former president should serve the remaining year under the house arrest wearing an electronic bracelet. And crisis in Myanmar. Myanmar coup has sparked unprecedented unity of ethnic groups as the groups join the protest against the military coup. Now, they demand the junta to return power to the elected government. Security forces opened fire on pro-democracy protesters on Sunday using tear gas, flashbangs, and of course stun grenades in towns and cities across Myanmar. According to the United Nations Human Rights Office, at least 18 people died and more than 30 people were injured in the clampdown. Now, the office, together with the activist groups, have put the death toll, and number of injured people quite higher than what has been reported by the nation. Now, images from across the country showed bodies lying in pools of blood on the streets of Myanmar as protesters huddled behind makeshift shields. Now, leaders have now called for stronger response as violence escalates, as hundreds getting arrested, including journalists in that country. And in Hong Kong, landmark hearing resumes for 47 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong as Western countries condemn the charges. Now, the politicians and activists were charged with the conspiracy to commit subversion under the national security law imposed by China. Prosecutors now argue whether the defendants should be granted bail or not. If found guilty, they could actually face life imprisonment. And in Britain, Britain's Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth II, was moved from one London hospital to another on Monday for treatment of an infection and observation of a pre-existing heart condition. Now, the 99-year-old Duke of Edinburgh was admitted on February 17th after feeling unwell. Now, Philip spent 14 days and 13 nights there, his longest day in a hospital hospital to date. Now, before he was transferred on Monday to another hospital in London. Now, doctors were continued to treat him for an infection, as well as undertaking testings and, of course, observation. We wish him quick recovery. Elsewhere, Pope Francis is expected to visit Iraq despite COVID-19 pandemic and terrorism threats. Now, this will be his very first trip outside Italy since the pandemic hit the globe. Reports have indicated that Vatican officials are now satisfied that security will be enhanced as Iraqi authorities look for ways to control the crowds. And the posters are already on the streets of Iraq as cleaning continues in preparation for the papal trip. Now, back to the African continent to some good news in Nigeria. 279 kidnapped school girls have been rescued and are now out of danger. The girls who were kidnapped at gunpoint in the northern part of Nigeria were received by the governor, as pundits now suspect that chances are high that ransom must have been paid, although the local governor did not clarify whether ransom was actually paid for the release of the girls. Now, the governor, however, noted that the earlier reports that showed that 317 girls were kidnapped was actually incorrect. Now, the payment of ransom is highly discouraged by authorities to avoid making it an enterprise. Now, this even as the Nigerian president calls upon the governors to secure schools, especially those in the northern Nigeria, terming the abduction quite inhumane. Well, no arrests have been made so far regarding the matter. Let's come back to the country where President Kenyatta has now urged Kenyans, especially those holding leadership positions, to shun all forms of corruption. Now, the head of state was speaking during the funeral service of the late Juja MP Francis Munyua, Titu, also known as Wakape, in Kiambu County on Tuesday. Now, President Kenyatta eulogized Wakape as a perfect example of a servant leader who served his constituents with the highest level of integrity, adding that he never stole even a penny from the government and that he was a leader who cherished peace and unity of the people that he led. Now, the president stated that it was not on the basis of the MP's prudent utilization of resources allocated to his constituency that he was re-elected to serve for a second term, and that he continuously worked hard to fulfill the pledges of the people of his constituency. He further assured the constituents that the government will actually accomplish all the projects that the late MP had initiated, promising to support the family of the late MP, owing to the fact that their relationship actually began way before President Kenyatta became the president of Kenya. Now, Wakape died on February 22nd at MP Shah Hospital in Nairobi while undergoing treatment after having battled brain cancer for quite some time. Members of the National Assembly suspended normal sessions to pay tribute to the late MP just a day after he was pronounced dead by the family members. May his soul rest in eternal peace. To other matter altogether, BBI, where the Service Party leader Mwangi Kiunjuri has said he will not engage in a no campaign against the BBI referendum. Now, the close ally of Deputy President William Ruto has been castigating BBI proponents over the referendum, saying that the document is actually 80% good and that they will work to improve it later on, adding that those pushing them to engage in a no contest will actually be in for a rude shock. Now, this is the clearest indication yet that though DP Ruto's allies have had dissenting voices on the bill, they will not form a no brigade. Now, Kiunjuri, however, pointed out that the BBI report does not address the problems that are affecting Kenyans and call for more engagements to ensure that needs of the people of Kenya are addressed. And to some quite disturbing matter, detectives have now unraveled a murder case in which 3 individuals were found dead at a house in government quarters along Jogo Road in Nairobi County. In a report, a team investigating the murder concluded that Kevin Koech, a senior seminarian who was awaiting his graduation as a Catholic priest, suffocated Charity Cheboy and her 8-year-old son, Alan Kipngetich, before he committed suicide. Now, they argue that there could not have been a 4th person in the house since Koech had locked himself in the toilet where Ajiko was actually found. Now, detectives have now planned to visit St. Thomas of Aquin Seminary in Karen, that is in Nairobi, to understand Koech's character. Now, so far, investigators have not established the motive of the act. Now, government pathologist Johansen Duor stated that a Charity Cheboy and her 8-year-old son died from suffocation, adding that their noses and mouths were actually covered. Now, Koech died from carbon monoxide emanating from a Ajiko found next to him, while Cheboy and the son were each holding a rosary in their hands. Now, she had bruises on her face, while Hassan had blood oozing from the mouth. The detectives further added that both the woman and her 8-year-old son had vomited on the bed and laid side by side. Remember, this is none other than a guy who was practicing priesthood. Quite interesting story. I don't know how it will end, but the matter is still under investigation in order to find out the reason as to why this could have happened. Now, another matter altogether, still a disturbing matter, where 22-year-old Kiambu man was arraigned and charged in court on Monday for plotting to assassinate President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, detectives said that Simon Mushiri posted threatening messages targeting the head of state on his social media pages on February 27, 2021. Now, the suspect was further accused of misusing his social media pages and threatening peace and tranquility in the nation and the office of the president. Now, detectives said that they tracked Mushiri through his mobile phone just a few days after they learned of his alleged Facebook post. Police apprehended him and detained him for interrogation and presented him in court 2 days later to answer the charges, where he actually pleaded not guilty and was released on a 200,000 Kenya shillings bail. Now, the prosecution failed to convince the court that Mushiri would interfere with evidence or was a flight risk. The defense lawyer argued that he was a first-time offender and a young adult who did not have any criminal records whatsoever. The magistrate asked the two teams to present evidence in court on March 15, 2021, when the case would be heard. And in the corridor of justice still, where the immediate former head of security at Standard Chartered Bank has now moved to court seeking 53.5 million Kenya shillings as compensation for unfair dismissal. Geoffrey Common, who was fired in July last year, says he was unfairly and unlawfully terminated by the bank after he served diligently as the head of security for Kenya and East Africa at large. He wants the court to award him 10.2 million Kenya shillings in damages for unfair termination, which will be an equivalent of his 12-month salary, and another 8.3 million shillings award, which will be his service pay for the 6 years that he has worked at the bank. He further wants the bank to pay him 35 million Kenya shillings for breach of fundamental rights and loss of reputation, adding that he has a young family and children who are wholly dependent on him for their livelihood, and the bank has subjected him to pauperism. Now, according to court records, some of the reasons for his termination were that he allegedly forwarded emails to an external email that breaching the bank's confidentiality and data regulation. Now, the bank said he failed to ensure that the CCTVs supplied met the bank standards, and he also commissioned the poor quality work, thus exposing the bank to risk. Now, this particular matter is still in the court as well. And finally, stakeholders in the entertainment industry have now urged President Uhuru Kenyatta to consider lifting the curfew and reducing the restrictions over their business to enable them get back to full productivity. Now, the stakeholders, consisting of restaurant operators, taxi operators, and fresh produce suppliers, said that the effect of measures to limit the spread of COVID-19 has greatly affected their businesses and caused economic damage. Now, in a press conference in Nairobi, they lamented that even as they adhere to the measures, that is the COVID-19 measures, they are dismayed to see transporters, leaders, and elected representatives breaking the rules and getting away with it. Now, the restaurant operator said that more than 30% of their colleagues have had to close their establishment as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's about 16,000 businesses that have collapsed so far, and given that at least every restaurant employs 10 people, that's about 160 people losing their livelihood since the pandemic hit the globe. Now, with bars and restaurants working one shift instead of the usual two, now restaurants have been forced to reduce their staff by half. Now, that means that close to 190,000 workers are now out of jobs. Now, more than 1 million Kenyans have been affected by COVID-19 pandemic, as each worker is estimated to have 5 dependents. Now, the entertainment industry supports an entire chain of other sectors such as taxi operators, border operators, and fresh produce suppliers. And the closure of an establishment now means that a lot more people are actually suffering. Well, we end it up right there on LCN News this evening. Thank you very much for watching. Always a great pleasure to have you right here with me. Have a very good evening, and of course, see you again next time. Keep safe. COVID-19 is still here with us. They're talking about the third wave. We are yet to see how this will actually happen, given that most Kenyans have actually lowered their guard. Have a good evening and God bless you.